And new at 10, the history we know always overshadows the unknown story. And the Rio Grande Valley is full of hidden historic gems. A clear example comes at Fort Brown in Brownsville, on the wings of one pilot who made history in the clouds.
The Cavalry Fort at Fort Brown has had a long list of very, very illustrious figures connected with the military, the likes of which are Robert E. Lee, Philip Sheridan, Ulysses S. Grant. But there's one particular individual that really went under the radar, and very, very, very few people even know about him. His name was Byron Q. Jones. Jones's story starts in his military career about 1908. He was in MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he transferred on over by commission to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Byron Jones actually invented the term double time. He graduated from the class of 1912. Now, bear in mind that in his particular sphere there were other people that you can recognize, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and a lot of the generals, Patton for that matter, that were involved in World War II were right there in that same circle. What makes Byron Jones stand out from the crowd? Well, he stood out at a very early age. In the early era of aviation as applied to the military, they did not quite know how to utilize these planes in warfare. They were accustomed to blimps, and so they attached the aviation unit to the signal corps. That's what brought him down to Brownsville, Texas. He left Fort Sill, Oklahoma, went through Galveston. In 1915, he landed on the airfield. Actually, it was the polo grounds and the parade grounds of old Fort Brown at that time. And he was assigned to a project whereby he wanted to do surveillance of the Mexican Revolution that was fighting on the other side of the river here. On one fine day, he and his fellow pilot were dispatched to survey the river area here, and he saw the entrenchments of Lucio Blanco, and that was the purpose of his going up and doing surveillance. But it's a hazardous occupation when you do this, because he was fired upon immediately by machine guns by the Mexican revolutionaries and small arms. He had to immediately go up to 2,500 feet in order to avoid being shot down. Hence, he earned his point in history, the first American warplane ever fired on by a hostile enemy force. During his life, he actually racked up a number of firsts. In the early years, right out of West Point, he did long-distance endurance, and he made records for that. Also, if you can imagine a biplane making a loop, he was the first one to do that. And if you have a plane flying along and it goes up like this to the point that it just stops, literally stops, that's what's called a stall, and it falls back and then you can get it restarted. He was the first one to do that. Next issue was a tailspin. To do a tailspin and correct yourself out of it, he was the first one to do that on the aviation records. From that point onwards, he was noticed by the military top brass as being a cut above in his ability to engineer and actually think the problems of that airplane out in order to correct it. And so therefore he was put in charge of training and also of design. He was so valuable for that effort that he had, that ability that he had. They didn't even put him in the Mexican-American War when it started up in 1916, 1917, and he also was not put on the front in the First World War in Europe because he was too valuable. His mind could figure out things, and they wanted him in Washington in order to teach these things and actually explore the mechanical possibilities of these airplanes. Coming up into the period of World War II, Byron Jones got on a project that we will forever remember his name connected with, the Jeep. He designed elements in the Jeep that was used in warfare, and he was the one that went to the U.S. Patent Office and got the patent on the Jeep that we use throughout the war and that we use today, actually. In those beginning years, the airplane was about as fragile as the men that were flying it. And he worked out those particular kinks in order to strengthen the aircraft mechanically and also to train the pilots and set up a program that the United States Army Air Corps would utilize. So such a man was here in Brownsville, Texas, and the rest is history. For KVEO News, I'm Eugene Fernandez.